Death in Paradise is a BBC procedural whodunit that started airing in 2011. It's had 14 seasons, 2 spin-off shows, and a few tie-in novels. The show centers on a British detective heading a team of criminal investigators on the fictional Caribbean island of Saint Marie. So far, the show has had 5 detectives.
Regenerate! Hello?
I don't follow the show as closely as I used to, but when I first discovered it, I couldn't get enough of it. I couldn't help but notice a few stories bear striking resemblances to Agatha Christie plots and solutions, and I'd like to talk about them. This is not to accuse the show of being unoriginal or to criticize it in any way. I just like pointing out parallels. Season 1, Episode 1, Arriving in Paradise. In the show's pilot episode, Ben Miller's character becomes the island's new inspector after the previous one is found shot dead. A gunshot had been heard, and when a police officer arrived, she opened a vault where the body was discovered. However, it turns out the man was actually alive when the vault closed, and the officer had in fact shot him when she opened the door, then pretended she'd found him dead. The closest parallel to this episode I can think of is a Miss Marple story, Greenshaw's Folly. In that story, the victim is apparently shot, the police are called, and a constable arrives first on the scene. In actuality, the shooting was staged to give the killer an alibi. The murder took place after the constable arrived, for the constable was really the killer in disguise. Season 1, Episode 3, Predicting Murder. An old woman predicts her own murder and is then found poisoned. The solution resembles that of the stage play version of Appointment with Death, in which a tyrannical old woman kills herself in such a way that casts suspicion on her family, so that they will never be free of her influence. Though in this case, the woman commits suicide in order that the man who murdered her daughter will be investigated, and finally arrested. Season 1, Episode 5, Spot the Difference. A prisoner is being transferred to serve out the rest of his sentence on Saint Marie, but on the ferry trip over, he's stabbed. No one notices he's dead until several minutes after the fact, since the boat is pitching violently. We see a similar setup in the Parker Pine short story, The Gate of Baghdad, only it's a bus instead of a ferry. The victim in that story is killed because he knew that one of his fellow passengers was really a notorious criminal in disguise. So too did the victim in this episode, for the prison guard who came along as an escort, played by Colin Salmon, was the real criminal. Season 1, Episode 6, An Unhelpful Aide. Although Shirley Henderson's character did remind me of Poirot's rival, Inspector Giraud, the parallel I draw here is to a story featuring Mr. Quinn. The victim is seen going scuba diving, and then later his body is found. His last live appearance gives his brother an alibi. Or does it? In the Agatha Christie story The Dead Harlequin, the victim is last seen at a costume party, except that wasn't the victim. That was his brother, wearing the same costume. The victim was actually already dead. The brother impersonated him to create a false time of death. Season 3, Episode 1, Death of a Detective. When after 2 seasons Ben Miller decided he was done playing Inspector Richard Poole, they wrote him out of the show. So did they have him go back home to the UK? Nope, they decided to kill off my favorite character, and replaced him with my other favorite character, Inspector Humphrey Goodman, played by Chris Marshall. The setup for this murder mystery is almost identical to that of Cards on the Table. 4 people are playing a game, while another man sits in a chair apart from them. At the end of the game, he's found dead, stabbed. Each of them went over at least once and talked to him, so one of them must be the killer. And in the end, it turns out they killed him because he knew a secret they had to protect. Which brings us to our second parallel for this episode. The murderer is a woman with a false identity. Her sister's identity. Her sister died a natural death some time ago, but for the sake of money, she impersonated her, and the wrong sister was reported dead. When she ran into someone who knew her secret, she had to silence him. Just like the killer in A Murder is Announced. Season 3, Episode 2, The Wrong Man. Almost every murder mystery TV show I've seen has at least one episode where we think someone's going to be the victim. Someone else bites the dust. It seems like they got unalived by mistake, and then it turns out the supposed intended victim is the killer after all. Christie might be credited with starting this trend with her early Poirot novel, Peril at End House, in which a young woman seems to be the target of multiple murder attempts, including a poisoned box of chocolates. Season 4, Episode 2, Hidden Secrets. A Herculean surfing champion is found shot to death. It looks like robbery, but the team eventually discovers he killed himself because he'd been diagnosed with a terminal illness. However, it was in fact murder, for he wasn't actually ill. The diagnosis had come from the victim's best friend, who secretly wanted the champion's wife, especially since thanks to a life insurance policy, she'd be $500,000 richer upon her husband's death. This same method of murder is employed in the Poirot short story The Adventure of the Egyptian Tomb, in which a doctor convinces his best friend that he's contracted leprosy. When the friend shoots himself, according to his will, the doctor inherits a fortune. Season 4, Episode 3, Damned If You Do. 5 people eat a poisoned stew. All of them become ill. One of them dies. Agatha Christie wrote multiple stories with this premise: The Tuesday Nightclub, The Herb of Death, The House of Lurking Death, and 450 from Paddington. Of these, I'd say The Herb of Death is the closest parallel to this episode. The murder was designed to look like an accident, as the poisonous plant was supposedly gathered by mistake due to its close resemblance to one of the herbs in the recipe. Also, the key to the mystery lies in discovering the second source of poison that made the victim ingest a fatal dose, while everyone else did not. Season 4, Episode 6, The Perfect Murder. A volleyball player is found stabbed to death in the back of her Jeep. As usual, the circumstances give every suspect an airtight alibi. None of them could have killed her and then driven her Jeep to where it was found. The answer? The victim drove the Jeep herself. She was hiding in the back, and the killer stabbed her moments before pretending to discover the body. Why was she hiding? Because she and the killer plotted to trick someone into getting their confession recorded. Only the killer had her own agenda. This bears a striking resemblance to The Mystery of the Spanish Chest, in which a dead man is found in a chest, and it's assumed the killer dumped the body there. Not so. The killer tricked the victim into hiding in the chest, promising to help him catch his wife being unfaithful, and then murdered him because he wanted the victim's wife himself. Season 4, Episode 8, Unlike Father, Unlike Son. Some of these mysteries are pretty challenging, but this one I figured out almost immediately, thanks in part to my having read The Murder on the Links, in which the victim eventually turns out to be a fugitive criminal trying to escape justice. His plan involved faking his death, but someone found out about the plan and took advantage of it, turning fakery into reality. Season 5, Episode 1, The Complex Murder. A millionaire is shot dead. One of the suspects is his wife. Another is his ex. They can't stand each other, and they both have alibis. But what's easy to miss is that their alibis come from each other. They're not only in cahoots, they're lovers. Agatha Christie was a master of love triangle twists. They pop up all over the place in her writing. The one that comes closest in this case is the mysterious affair at Styles, where the victim's husband and best friend seem to be arch enemies, but are really conspiring to murder the wife. Season 5, Episode 6, Dishing Up Murder. This one's a reach, but I see parallels to 2 Poirot novels here, The Hollow and 1-2 Buckle My Shoe. The Hollow because in the end it turns out all the suspects became accessories after the fact in order to protect the guilty party. And Buckle My Shoe because the victim we were introduced to at the beginning of the episode was actually not the victim. The murder occurred before the episode began, and this was actually one of the conspirators in disguise as the victim, in order to confuse the time of death. Season 5, Episode 7, The Blood Red Sea. Another episode ruined for me because of my Agatha Christie background. As soon as the victim's wife took a call supposedly from her dying husband, for which we only had her word, I knew to suspect her because I was reminded of the murder of Roger Ackroyd, in which a killer stages a fake phone call in order to give himself an alibi. There's also a slight parallel to Sleeping Murder, as the killer's scapegoat wakes up to find himself standing over the victim and mistakenly believes he's the murderer. Season 6, Episode 4, Stumped in Murder. A local cricket champion is found shot to death. Evidence builds up against a man who is revealed to have been blackmailing the victim, but it turns out the death was not murder, but suicide. The victim's best friend blamed the blackmailer for causing the man's death, so he rearranged the evidence to make it look like murder to implicate him. This plot was used twice by Agatha Christie, first in The Market-Basing Mystery, and later in Murder in the Mews. Season 6, Episode 7, In the Footsteps of a Killer. A man walks into the police station and claims he can provide an alibi for a woman who was convicted of murder years ago and died in prison. With the case reopened, suspicion is cast anew upon the victim's family. This setup is straight out of Ordeal by Innocence, so I spent the episode watching for clues that foreshadowed a similar solution. In the end, the solution was completely different, though it did involve the victim's body hidden beneath a building, since the murder was committed during construction. As the body was put there by the victim's husband and killer, I draw a second parallel to Dead Man's Folly. Well, that's all for now. I'm sure there are some parallels I missed, so feel free to mention them in the comments. This will probably be my last Agatha Christie comparison video of 2025. I'm excited to review more adaptations in the new year, so I'll see you then. Thanks for your support, and blessed be.